Hi guys, and welcome to the two-part tutorial on the basics of three-dimensional rendering. In these tutorials we will focus on creating simple lighting and material scenarios. So I've opened in 3D Studio Max my Hill House model in which we will demonstrate these techniques. The basics of the basics of rendering is composed of four separate entities. So that one is camera and view positioning, two, lighting, three, materials, and then four, composition. So composition is sort of the overall uniting goal. So we want nicely composed images. But let's start by understanding the basics of positioning cameras. So let's make a new camera. Go to Create, find Cameras, select Standard Cameras, and we want a target camera. So I like to place my cameras in the top view, and what we're trying to do is get a view, an exterior view of the model, not unlike this perspective view. So let's start with placing the origin of the camera with the left mouse. So I'm going to come out here and start, and then drag out where we want the point or the target to be, and now release the mouse to finish placing the camera. So now I have a camera in my scene, and to view that camera, to see what the camera has drawn, go right click on any of your viewports. In my case I want to use this perspective view, and change the cameras to camera 01. Notice the camera has drawn itself on the 00 plane. So there's a number of issues with this camera. So we want to learn how to move the camera and the target. And there's a couple of different ways that we can do that. If I come into my perspective window, you can use these tools down on the bottom right hand side to manipulate your camera. So if I use dolly camera, I can move back and forth. And if I use truck, I can effectively pan. So that moves the camera and the target. If I look in the front view, it's moving them together. And then I also have this other tool, field of view. So you can change the camera angle, or the lens angle, so that you can get more or less in your scene. So this is a really wide camera angle, and to get the desired positioning, what you want to do is play with the dolly and the field of view. So we don't want too steep of a perspective, but then again we also don't want it to be too flat. Okay, so say that I like this camera view. Again, there's another way you can manipulate these things, and that's by moving the camera or the camera target. To select the camera target, you can either click on it, or if you have one thing selected, so say I have the camera selected, you can right click and go to camera, select camera target. Now you can move the target independent. And as a general rule, I never like to move the camera target up or down in the Z unless it's a purposeful meaning. So that what this allows is if the camera and the target are on the same plane, it will allow all the vertical elements in your scene to remain vertical. And as a rule of thumb, this is sort of generally pleasing in renderings. But watch, if I move the camera target up, things get sort of distorted as you're looking up at something or down at something. So unless it's purposeful, don't do that. Okay? Once we have the positioning selected, we can, let's do a little test rendering and see what we've got within our scene. So go to rendering, render. So it appears that everything seems to be fitting within the view, or within the selected aspect ratio, and notice that it's rendered here as a square. And what I'm looking at here is sort of a landscape orientation rectangle. So to figure out what size and ratio image we're going to output, we have to first display the safe frames in our camera view. So right click where it says camera 1 and go to show safe frames. Now we can see that this sort of square image is the same ratio as this, so that now we can change that ratio to compose our scene. So we can go to rendering, render setup, and where it says in the common tab under output size, we can change the ratio, the image aspect ratio, so that it's if it's a really wide landscape view that we want, or we can make it a really tall image. For our scene, I want to make it more of a horizontal image, and maybe I want to pan around a little bit to adjust my scene. Okay? So now, if I click render,